Okay, these are a pile of star videos I took. I adjusted the contrast up to 100%, the saturation to 100%, and the brightness down to minus 100%. I also sped these up, some 5 times, some 4 times, some 3 times, depending on the length of the video, just to make it a lot shorter, but there's a compilation of them. I also got the audio from a gentleman named bgaede. He's a very interesting man. So I put some of his audio to 3 videos, and I'll put a link to it in the description. I'm just wondering what we're catching here. I might be wrong with anything I say, but heck, this was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed doing it. And it made an interesting, very interesting video. I hope everybody enjoys it. And if not, and you want to criticize me on it, fine. If you do enjoy it, give me some compliments. I did spend a lot of time making this thing. It was a booger to make because of all the videos I had to find and put together to at least make something that come up halfway decent. All right. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks a lot for watching, and have a good day.
Despite centuries of martyrdom and struggle, the Inquisition is firmly entrenched in positions of power. Cloaked monks and rogue priests of the Inquisition have given way to arrogant mathematicians who today pose as physicists and scientists, zombies who are cut with the same cookie cutter along the lengthy university assembly lines. The mathematicians have maneuvered to institutionalize authority. Idolatry, and above all, censorship. Censorship is so entrenched in the mathematical world that it is about as easy to publish a qualitative criticism of general relativity and quantum mechanics in a mainstream journal as it is to squeeze a camel through a needle's eye. What is alarming is that censorship has creeped in to become a habit among people who consider themselves dissidents. In 2004, after Nature and Science journals censored me, I submitted 2 articles to the Church of Apollyon. The bishops were disgusted. They accused me of heresy, and shortly after, they summoned me before the Pure Inquisition. What do you mean a field is not an object? This is blasphemy, the lead inquisitor shouted. I was aware that all the theories of Torquemada and his buddies revolved around the word field. If there was no physical object called field, what did this say about their religion? I was putting on trial the very foundations of their beliefs. The editors stood behind their bishops, saying that they were all experts in their fields. They rubber-stamped the decision. And guess what? I never saw my articles in print. Last year, I published an introduction to thread theory in a mainstream journal. A couple of people unrelated to me placed these references in the Wikipedia article carrying my name. The references to this peer-reviewed article have consistently been deleted by vigilant mainstream fanatics, fearful that such heresy might reach a broader audience. In December of 2010, Stephen Molyneux from Free Domain Radio, an allegedly free and progressive channel, contacted me and asked me if I would agree to be interviewed. We had what I believed to be a cordial dialogue between two individuals who don't share the same views on atheism and the scientific method. Predictably, there were differences of opinion. And still, during the interview, Molyneux had no choice but to concede some points, specifically that the existence or non-existence of God is not a matter of belief or proof.
Does God disappear? Does he vanish because I refuse or I don't believe in God?
Well, if God exists subjectively, then he does not cease to exist if you disbelieve in him.
Hopefully. Just like my chair, hopefully it does not disappear because I refuse to believe in it.
Right. And
My point,
sorry, go ahead.
My point, Stefan, let me get to the point. My point is that belief has absolutely nothing to do with existence. There is no provision for belief or knowledge or faith or wisdom in the definition of exist.
All right. I certainly believe, I accept that belief does not determine existence. In other words, if I believe there are leprechauns, they don't pop into existence.
We should stop saying that I believe or I don't believe in the existence of God.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you because then it says it's more of an opinion.
Of course, this didn't bode well with Free Domain Radio, since it has to appease its donors. Stefan wrote to me a couple of weeks after the interview saying that the color went out on the video after 5 minutes, and that because of that, he would not be airing the clip. However, people close to him in his forum said something different. After a member requested a second interview, one answered, "Well, to put your mind at ease then, it's almost certainly not going to happen, for at least the following reasons. First, the last interview was pretty bad. Several people found him off-putting, to say the least, very hard to follow, and or uncertain of the exact point he was trying to make. Second, Steph is limited on resources, especially time. Takes quite a lot of investment for him to do one of these interviews, so there needs to be a compelling case to bring somebody back for another interview." A second member exposed what was really going on behind the scenes. Steph's credibility and name recognition is on the rise, and he'd probably like to keep it that way, which is why the original video with bgaede was buried as fast as humanly possible. So in addition to censorship, we have hypocrisy. If, as Molyneux stated, the quality of the video did not come out right, you would think that he would have just scheduled another one. Last year, I suffered ridicule and persecution at the Zeitgeist movement, the one-time militant arm of Jacques Fresco's Venus Project. People who are preparing for and propose a new socio-economic model based on post-scarcity. Post-scarcity is a utopian world where goods and services are so abundant that they are free. Of course, the last person these folks wish to listen to is someone like me. I argue that we are the last humans on Earth. The backlash was hostile from the start of my thread. The moderator finally disabled comments and cynically placed the entire thread under religion. Early this year, I was banished from the UK Preppers Forum for similar reasons. Was it because I used foul language? Because I spammed the site? Or attacked someone? No. I was banished merely for raising the subject of our species' imminent extinction. I received so much hate mail from the start of my post that it was unreal. Finally, I asked the preppers to tell me what they were prepping for. No one could give me a straight answer. Some offered vague replies as if they never even pondered the matter. Most had in mind a natural catastrophe that temporarily deprived them of resources, specifically power and water. Will a tsunami overrun England? Some worry about nuclear war. And then, of course, there were a couple who almost broke the code, the collapse of the economy. But even here, the economic meltdown was seen as something temporary. The proponents could not explain why our economy would bounce back. One day, the entire thread was deleted, including comments made by other members. Why? Even if they did not agree with my proposal, there was no reason to delete the thread and censor everyone who had participated in the debate. In October of 2011, I started making 2 videos. One about the workings of the solar system, and the other one about black holes and the mechanisms of galaxies. At that time, Kim from our discussion group asked me whether I was going to attend the Electric Universe conference in Las Vegas in January of 2012. This was the first I had heard of that get-together. In November, Stephen Smith from the Electric Universe formally invited me to attend. I replied that I could not, but that I would appreciate him showing the 2 videos I was preparing in my stead. He told me that he would have a look at them and asked me to send him a couple of clips. I clarified that I was not asking him to review my videos or to take responsibility for their contents. I was merely asking him to show them at the Electric Universe, since I was proposing a different universe than the Electric Universe. As an example, I added that I was going to argue, among other things, that plasma, the bread and butter of the Electric Universe, is not a physical object. I could just as well have told a Christian that Jesus had never existed. Steve impulsively wrote back, "There isn't a substance called plasma? Plasma is ionized matter." Before I had a chance to reply, Steve deleted the entire thread. I thought that was quite rude of him. A scientist would prefer to confront his accusers rather than run away. So I immediately became a member of the Facebook Electric Universe and started a thread titled Censorship, in which I objected to being censored so barbarically. Were these the rules of engagement of the Electric Universe, or was this an isolated incident? I wrote, "I only joined the Facebook Electric Universe group temporarily merely to put this letter. You can delete me and the letter from the group at your discretion." It is actually quite ironic that people from the Electric Universe who protest against censorship from the mathematical establishment then turn around and censor people who don't totally bow down to their gods. Steve's girlfriend Tiffany came to the rescue, saying that it had all been a misunderstanding. However, this issue was not resolved when the entire censorship thread I had started was wiped out as well. The Electric Universe folks did indeed practice censorship. The moderator for our science forum sent a letter to Tiffany to request clarification of what appeared to be institutionalized censorship. Censorship, and frankly clumsy attempt to cover it up, isn't going to go unnoticed. Tiffany wrote back, "Sorry, but it will. Brutal truth. Nobody cares. There are far more successful freethinkers that get censored all the time. Join the club. Either you rise above it or drown in your own pity party." Well, the truth finally came out. The charade became exposed for what it really was. The breathtaking reply showed that the folks at the Electric Universe were indeed censoring people who questioned their beliefs. These are the appalling ethics practiced by this dissident group, which purports to do science. What happened next only confirmed my harsh assessment. Without any reason whatsoever, without having spammed or cussed anyone, the moderators at the Electric Universe wiped my name from their roster as well. Censorship has no place in a scientific forum. The dissidents at Free Domain, at the Zeitgeist Movement, at the Venus Project, at the Electric Universe have yet to learn the fundamentals. Science is about exchanging ideas. Without ground rules of fair play, without a constitution, without a law of conduct or of debate, these organizations have no future. In fact, they would find it to their advantage to allow for dissenting opinions in their forums. It would enrich the discussions. As long as these people continue shielding their theories from analysis and criticism by resorting to underhanded censorship, they will be as far away from science as the religions they dare to criticize. mathematicians have long ago proposed that the nucleus of a massive atom contains particles they call neutrons. The mathematicians illustrate these neutrons just like they do their protons, as tiny bowling balls. They justify this sleight of hand on the basis that protons and neutrons weigh about the same. More precisely, a neutron weighs just about as much as a hydrogen atom, a proton bowling ball and an electron golf ball put together. To distinguish these two bowling balls, the mathematicians place a little plus sign on the right of the proton and a zero on the neutron. The positive sign indicates that the proton is positively charged. The zero indicates that a neutron has no charge. It is this vague, unspecified, mysterious charge thingy that allegedly keeps the negatively charged electrons bound to the proton. Neutrons lack this mystical mediator of attraction. But until the quantum mathematicians can tell you what this magical charge thingy is in physical terms, and how this charged entity or medium physically mediates the attraction between protons and electrons, we certainly cannot understand what it is that the neutron is lacking. What is physically different between a proton and a neutron? Why does one have charge and the other one doesn't if both are made of quarks which throw gluons at each other?
Let's zoom in on one of the protons. It is composed of 3 quarks, 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, moving around very close to each other. The quarks are kept together by a number of gluons interacting with the quarks and also with the other gluons. The gluons give rise to the gluon field that keeps the constituents of the proton together.
How does this proton architecture attract a negative electron? Does the electron have a hook-like shape that latches onto a ring-like proton? Or is it a rubber band that binds them? In other words, we need to answer how the properties and behaviors of protons and neutrons are related to their architectures. Thread theory proposes that light is mediated by an entity that resembles a twined 2-strand rope. The rope forks out at the surface of the atom. One strand of the rope continues straight and forms the proton, an urchin-like star at the center of an atom. The other thread of this rope coils around and weaves the electron shell, a balloon that encapsulates the proton. This model enables us to visualize the phenomenon the mathematicians call charge. We can now understand why an electron is physically bound to a proton. An electron is not a bead that orbits the atom, as quantum would have you believe. The electron is a balloon weaved by countless threads that fork out at the surface of the electron shell. The electron can't leave the proton even if it wanted to, because it is interwoven with and thus bound permanently to it. An atom expands and contracts. The so-called quantum jumping torques the rope. The torquing of the rope is what we call light. The radial release and reeling of all these links of rope is what the quantum mathematicians have always referred to as energy. When the atom expands and contracts, it also causes a tiny friction, the sliding and rolling of one strand along the other everywhere the ropes fork out, which occurs almost everywhere along the surface of the electron shell. The aggregate of this friction is what the quantum mathematicians call charge. Thus, an atom has charge at its surface and releases energy. Einstein's mystical equation finally has a physical interpretation. The rope torques in 2 directions, to and from every atom in the universe. This disturbance of the rope is what we detect as light, traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second. Thus, energy consists of links of rope released and reeled at the speed of light in 2 directions, to and from every atom in the universe. The quantum mathematicians instead still hold on to the Ptolemaic notion that this signal consists of one-way particles they call photons. What the astrologers of the religion of quantum mechanics cherish the most are predictions. So here's a prediction for them. The rope model of light and the atom predicts neutrons. If every rope in the universe converges upon an atom, these ropes must also crisscross in countless regions where they pass on their way to atoms. The rope hypothesis proposes that this intersection of ropes constitutes a neutron. Under the rope model of light, whereas a proton is a convergence of electric threads, a neutron is a convergence of electromagnetic ropes. An atom produces charge by rubbing or rolling the electric and magnetic threads where they fork out. The neutron lacks the architecture necessary to perform this function. Here we have drawn a red dashed line merely to show where the atom would end. Thus, although the weight of the neutron and the atom are about the same, they have different architectures. They're structured differently. One more time for those who didn't catch it the first time. The magnetic thread forks out and weaves the electric shell. The electric thread continues straight to the center of the atom. Quantum jumping produces a friction at this fork everywhere along the surface of the electron. The mathematicians refer to this buzzing all along the surface of the atom as charge. The neutron lacks the ability to generate this friction because it is comprised only of ropes heading towards atoms. Thus, unlike the atom, the neutron has no charge.
Let's look now at how neutrons are incorporated into atoms.
Mathematicians allege that God created neutrons to keep positively charged protons from repelling each other. The nucleus would otherwise blow apart. However, deuterium and tritium are two isotopes of hydrogen. Hydrogen has one proton and no neutrons. Deuterium has one proton and one neutron, and tritium has one proton and two neutrons. If the purpose of neutrons is to keep protons apart, why did God put neutrons in these two hydrogen isotopes? Clearly the quantum mathematician's prediction didn't come true. There should be no reason for an atom to have more protons than neutrons. The periodic table of the elements says something different. Ever heavier elements have more neutrons than protons. For instance, sodium has 11 protons and 12 neutrons. Rubidium 37 and 48, and cesium has 55 and 78. That's now two predictions of the religion of mathematics which didn't come true. More intriguing, as we move from left to right on the periodic table, although the atoms have more protons and neutrons, they occupy smaller volumes. For example, sodium has 23 protons and neutrons and has been measured to have a radius of 180 picometers. Chlorine has 35 protons and neutrons but measures about half as much, 100 picometers. The quantum mathematicians explained this trend mathematically, saying that the radius of an atom is a function of nuclear charge. The higher the positive charge in the nucleus, the closer it will attract the negative electrons buzzing around it. However, potassium has 39 protons and neutrons and measures more than twice that of chlorine. That's now a third prediction of mathematics that didn't come true.
Let's propose two theories under the rope hypothesis to address these questions. Keep in mind what we are trying to answer here.
We are trying to answer two questions. Why do heavier elements in the periodic table have more neutrons? And why does atomic radius decrease from left to right despite that the elements have more protons and neutrons? Under the rope model of light and the thread version of the atom, an electron is a balloon that encapsulates the proton star. In contrast, a neutron is a crossroads of electromagnetic ropes extending from all atoms to all others. Heavier elements have balloons encapsulating smaller electron balloons and neutrons. It is inside stars like our Sun where chemical elements are manufactured. There, countless atoms and neutrons are packed closely together. As atoms are compressed, the electron shells merge and form bigger balloons. These larger volumes necessarily incorporate more neutrons. For instance, when the electron shell of hydrogen expands, it incorporates an adjacent neutron and becomes deuterium. If the shell expands again, it now incorporates a second neutron and becomes tritium. The reason tritium is unstable and radioactive is that the balloon is stretched to the limit. It wishes nothing better than to contract to a lower energy level, to a more manageable size by expelling a neutron. Similarly, uranium is radioactive and unstable because it has 92 protons and 146 neutrons, 238 nuclides compressed into a volume no larger than sodium, which only has 23. Therefore, to invoke the favorite word of mathematics again, the rope hypothesis predicts that larger electron shell volumes will necessarily incorporate more neutrons. The larger the electron balloon, the more neutrons it can incorporate within this larger volume. And the more the outer shell is stretched, the more unstable and radioactive an atom will tend to be. It will attempt to expel nuclides.
In order to understand why atoms are smaller as we move from left to right on the periodic table, let's first look at an analogy.
We have a box with 4 sets of balloons, representing orbitals of a given chemical element. If we squeeze a 5th atom in the box, each atom will occupy a smaller volume. The amount of matter will be the same, but each atom will be denser. This mechanism explains how an atom shrinks, but not why an atom of sodium is larger than an atom of chlorine. In order for the analogy to succeed, the box itself must also contract. A star is a differentiated object. Heavier chemical elements, those with more protons and neutrons, are manufactured closer to the center of a star where the pressures are increasingly greater. Not only is a given layer compressed from the sides, but also from the layers mounted on top of it. Under thread theory, it is this increasing pressure as we go deeper into a star that accounts for the smaller sizes of heavier elements. To recap, the larger an electron balloon, the more neutrons it will encapsulate, and the more unstable and radioactive a chemical element will tend to be as the membrane approaches its stretching limit. The star later compresses an atom like our shrinking box, squeezing the atoms to their final sizes. Heavier chemical elements, those with more neutrons and protons, are manufactured at a deeper level where the pressures in a star are greater. Thus, despite having fewer protons and neutrons, sodium, which is created farther from the center, has a greater volume than chlorine, which is produced at a deeper level where the pressures are greater. The purpose of the neutron is not to keep positive proton marbles apart, but is rather a direct function of the radius of an atom. For decades, the mathematicians have been investigating cosmic microwave background radiation. They allege that space is filled with particles they call photons. According to the religion of mathematics, when God created the universe 13 billion years ago, he unleashed an evil spirit the mathematicians call radiation, and which now pervades and haunts every region of space. In the religion of mathematics, space itself is a medium, a bag or an ocean of sorts that is encapsulated and contoured by who knows what.
The universe is therefore expanding.
Yesterday, it was smaller than it is today.
Space, the mathematicians claim, is sizzling with supernatural and surrealistic activity. Mathematics holds that the vacuum is made of particles which constantly come into and out of existence. The members of this religion even claim that they have experiments to back their words. Thread theory certainly regards the universe as an amazing place, but Mother Nature does not run her shop with black magic. Again, to invoke the favorite word of mathematics, the rope hypothesis predicts the cosmic microwave background radiation. All the ropes extending to atoms through neutrons fill the regions between planets, stars, and gases. It is this so-called background radiation that our technology now allows us to detect. Thus, because of their irrational insistence on particles, the mathematicians erroneously concluded that the gravity probe gyroscopes drag space itself around, when in fact it is this vibrating mesh of ropes and threads which forms the background the mathematical world confuses with space. Regarding the mysterious appearance and disappearance of particles that allegedly comprise the vacuum, the rope hypothesis proposes a simpler and more down-to-earth explanation. The scholars are describing what is known as beta and inverse beta decay, the ability for a neutron to spontaneously convert into a proton while expelling an electron from the nucleus and vice versa.
To become a proton, remember, a neutron has neutral charge. So what it does is it emits an electron. And I know you're saying, Sal, that's crazy. I didn't even know neutrons had electrons in them and all of that. And I agree with you. It is crazy. And one day we'll study all of what exists inside of the nucleus. But let's just say that it can emit an electron. And by emitting an electron, instead of being neutral, now it turns into a proton. And so this is called beta decay.
What is physically happening when an atom converts to a neutron or a neutron to an atom? How does the fact that an atom loses its electron bead make it lose charge and transforms the proton into a neutral neutron? Under the thread model of the atom, a neutron merely has to release one of the threads of each rope that comprises it. The resulting architecture is an atom. The released threads now form a shell that encompasses the proton star, and both begin to quantum jump and to generate charge. Conversely, the threads comprising the electron shell of an atom can spontaneously merge with the threads comprising the proton star and form a rope. The atom has disappeared. In its place, we have a convergence of ropes, each of which continues onward to some atom as if nothing. The seeming appearance and disappearance of matter from the nothingness of space is simply the spontaneous conversion of atoms into neutrons and neutrons back into atoms. The particle model proposed by the religion of quantum mechanics has no chance in science. There are no quarks, neutrinos, electrons, muons, photons, gluons, gravitons, solitons, chronons, phonons, or any of the other hundreds of particles invented by the mathematicians to plug holes in their irrational explanations. Such a proposal would nevertheless make William of Ockham very angry. The alleged traces of particles that the mathematicians see in their bubble and cloud chambers, and which they've never filmed in the making, are actually electromagnetic ropes and threads which they induced to come into view when they shook the cosmic web, the ropes and threads that bind every atom in the universe. In Mother Nature's simple and symmetric universe, there are only atoms interconnected by electromagnetic ropes which intersect at neutrons.